Hello, my name is Sheriff William Honsal.
And can you tell us a little bit today about the process of creating the updated order? Who was at the table? Who's being involved in these county decisions? And what goes into making this order?
So Dr. Frankovich is our public health officer, and she's the driving force behind the orders here in the county. Her direction is very, very important in these orders, but we have a policy group that meets. The policy group consists of myself, EOC Director, the Health and Human Services Director, Connie Beck, our CAO, Amy Nilsson, also the Director of Public Health, Michelle Stevens, as well as our County Council, Jefferson Billingsley. We're all in a room, we're talking, discussing this, we're discussing the needs of the community, what we're hearing in the community, further clarification. So there's a lot of dialogue that goes on when it comes to these orders and some specifics that need to occur within these within these orders. So when this change when there's several things that were discussed this last week about changing order, there was a lot of back and forth and about what specifically needed to be addressed. And this is the stuff that really was important that we needed to address at this time, and that's why it made it in the order.
In some of that you are addressing, I know there's been a lot of confusion regarding essential businesses and whatnot, and there was an exemption for businesses that supply products which enhance the quality of life. Can you talk about, the decision to take that out
Yes.
of the order?
So the order is pretty clear overall. What is essential travel? What are essential businesses? What are essential activities? Those are pretty clear. But that particular section in the order, the previous order, the businesses that are there to enhance the quality of life, man, that could be anything and everything. Someone could justify their open business by that paragraph. And so, because literally every business enhances someone's quality of life one way or another. So someone could easily justify their business. So the idea of a shelter-in-place order and for determining what essential businesses are to keep the community apart, to make sure that we don't spread this virus, through community transmission. And so by shutting some loopholes, because there were people that were keeping their business, which really wasn't vital or essential, were keeping open based upon that terminology. So we felt it was necessary to remove that provision in the old ordinance, and so we can make it clearer. A lot of times people are still saying, well, I don't know if I'm an essential business or not. If you have to ask that question whether or not you're an essential business or not, you're probably not an essential business.
Can you talk a little bit about the Sheriff's Office role in this incident response? Obviously, we are not medical providers, but the Sheriff's Office and our law enforcement in general plays a huge role. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So this is a public health emergency. That's what it started out as, but as it progressed, obviously this has become a county-wide emergency. That's why I declared a local emergency yesterday. But this affects the Sheriff's Office and law enforcement, first responders tremendously. So we've had to reshape how we do law enforcement. We had to reshape how we take complaints, how we investigate crimes, how we interact with the public. It's something that is opposite of essentially what we started out doing here, right? Community policing and being up close, solving community problems firsthand, being able to be empathetic and be, there and see someone eye to eye when it comes to taking a crime report. So all those things have to be put on the shelf right now because we want to make sure that the community is protected, not only from us, but from the person spread that could happen. And so our first responders, our law enforcement officers, we're on mandatory 12-hour days right now. So we have 8 to 10, sometimes 12 deputies that are working the entire county. And they're going to calls for service. They're not slowing down, and they're heading out there, being the visual deterrent and answering the call right now. We're not sheltering in place. We're out there doing the work right now and making sure that we are the visible enforcement arm of our local government.
And how are our deputies handling, the changes and all of this?
So the stress on our whole society is pretty immense right now, and the stress on our first responders and our deputies is quite evident, and so it's difficult because we have families ourselves, and we have to manage our families, manage our kids being home, doing homeschool, our significant others helping out, and oftentimes being unemployed now, out of work. And then we're working long hours, and so it's difficult on our first responders and our deputy sheriffs. But we still have a great attitude here. They're still willing to work. They're still very responsive to the needs of the community. And also our correctional facility. I mean, we have 22 deputies that are working day in and day out making sure that our 300 plus inmates are protected and doing their part to protect our community by housing them here. So they're showing up every day, and we haven't seen an increase in sick leave in our deputy sheriffs, and I applaud them for that. They're answering the call, they're here, and we haven't had to order anyone back to work. People are showing up, willing to work, willing to help, and it's quite good to see that as far as our first responders go.
Perfect. Back to the order itself, what methods is the county using to enforce the order, and is there follow-up after? So say if you go to a business and ask them to, they're not essential, is there follow-up being happening?
So what we're doing is we're getting complaints. The tip line has yielded some complaints. There are times when we do get calls directly in our dispatch center, but we're urging people to use that tip line. But when the complaints do come in, we're following up on them. So we're sending deputies out, confronting the businesses that aren't essential, giving them notices. They give an official written notice that they get to keep, saying, you've been identified as a non-essential business, so you need to close and adhere to the shelter-in-place ordinance, or you could be facing a misdemeanor charge. And they could be getting receive a citation, which is up to $1,000 fine. So obviously we don't want to add more fines to people or those kind of things. We want to do enforcement through education, and we want that voluntary compliance what we talked about before. So we're giving the opportunity for people to shut their doors, opportunity for people to honor that shelter in place. If they don't do that, then we will come back and issue a citation. So far, we haven't issued a citation for that purpose. We've gotten compliance. We've received compliance from many businesses and people, and so we don't want to have to do that, but that is something that as this continues to unfold, if we do have to go back, we will be given citations.
And we are helping some of these local businesses with our economic development branch and the EOC, correct? We're offering some sort of support, helping point them to resources.
Yes, a part of our EOC is responding to the needs of businesses that are closed and that have been impacted severely by this virus and the shelter in place. So we are tracking those. We have Scott Adair, who's our economic development director. He's there and part of our EOC working with small businesses, trying to track those losses, trying to get people signed up for assistance. The goal here after this emergency is over is to rebuild and make sure that our small businesses are, as much restored as possible. If there's funding, if there's a stream to help, we want to drive them to that stream to help them to make sure that they can exist after this emergency. And so that's our goal.
Great. And then in this new order, it also further puts restrictions on parks and campgrounds. Can you talk about the reason for those restrictions?
As we've gone through this previous order, we found that there were people that weren't adhering to our social distancing guidelines. They were playing at parks, playgrounds. They were at basketball hoops, places, basketball courts, tennis courts, congregating at golf courses, and those kind of things. So the public health director felt like it was necessary to get more stringent on these type of things and spell it out, saying these parks have to be closed that have these communal play areas, these courts, to ensure that the community transmission does not occur. So we have to be more explicit in there. And we're kind of following the same guidelines throughout the state. State parks are now closed, and so we felt we have enough open space up here. We don't want to close down all open space. This is what makes Humboldt County unique, and I believe Mendocino County has shut down all open space and all parks. We don't want to have to go there. We want people to adhere to the social distancing guidelines. We want people to honor those. When you're on a trail or something, to honor that 6-foot bubble that we talked about. But if people don't and they continue to congregate, then we're going to have to come up with more strict guidelines. So we don't want to have to do that.
Okay. And are we working with national parks, state parks, BLM, for enforcement of social distancing and such on those lands? Yeah,
so state parks and federal parks are actually closed, and so we talked to them about that, and it's kind of a soft closure, but if there's some issues with that, CHP is patrolling the state parks campgrounds. We're assisting CHP. We want to make sure that everyone is adhering to those guidelines here in the county. So we're working all together to make sure that happens.
Okay. And then what PPE or measures are local law enforcement taking to protect themselves?
So law enforcement has rubber gloves that they use, latex gloves. We have eye protection and also our N95 masks. So if they have a need to wear that equipment, they will out there in the scenes. And so you may see them show up looking like EMS personnel, but they're going to be in deputy uniform. They're going to be in law enforcement uniform with the mask, with the goggles. You can't be too safe in this time right now. Right now, the general guidelines is the community doesn't necessarily need to have masks, but we are exposing ourselves in law enforcement to the unknown. And so we don't know who's affected and who's not. And so if there is any need to don the personal protective equipment, our deputies will do that, and they've been supplied with that equipment, and so you may see that as the time goes on.
And some people are wondering about closing the county borders.
Sure.
I know we've talked about that before, but what would it take? Is that something that's even on the table at this point?
So shutting down the county is the last thing we want to do. I mean, our county depends on commercial travel coming here to deliver services and goods. And so we're depending on that. Shutting down the entire county would be detrimental in the economy. And all that stuff is something that we would have to coordinate through the state. We don't have the resources to put checkpoints on all 6 areas of the county, and making sure there's someone at all the airports. It's going to be impossible to do. So what we want to do is, again, do things like this order did. We want to restrict travel. There's essential travel only in the county. That's what the order tells you. And so vacationing is not essential travel. So we've pushed that out there. That's why vacation rentals and motels and short-term stay places, those are shut down. We cannot allow that to happen, and unless you're a part of the essential services or essential businesses, or a part of an essential worker, coming in here. Traveling nurses, doctors, utility workers, they still have to have a place to stay. So they're able to come here and stay. But other than that, we don't want people to vacation here at this time. We don't want, the Bay Area folks coming up here and trying to retreat, what's happening in the Bay Area, and then further affecting our people here. The fact is that our hospitals are set up for our population. And so if we have more people that come into Humboldt County from these other areas, the needs from the county are going to get a lot higher, and we're not going to have the bed space that it's going to take to fight a potential huge outbreak here. So we want people to stay in their counties, deal with the medical systems in their counties. We want to deal with our people here, and if we have a spike in people having COVID and they need hospitalization, we want our hospital beds to be used for our people.
And there's been a lot of calls to shut the airport down from the community. Whose call is that?
So it's a call that has to be made through the governor or the president. So shutting down FAA flight operations is something that I think people see as an easy fix for a really small problem here. I mean, when you look at all the travelers that come in and out of Humboldt County, the airport is the least amount of travelers that actually come into Humboldt County. People are coming in every day on 101, 299, both north-south, Highway 36. So people are coming in through the cars and that kind of thing. And people are still traveling through the airports. So if you shut down a regional airport, people are going to fly into Medford, fly into Redding, fly into San Francisco, Santa Rosa, Sacramento, and still come in and all those things. So we're not reducing the impact of that. What we have done is we are in the process of getting information out to people that are returning from travel. That has to be essential travel, right? But giving them information about what the guidelines are as far as self-quarantine and then also what to look for. And those are the guidelines that we're going to be handing out to everyone that comes off the plane. So we will be getting that information out there. We understand the concerns that people have about the airport, but again, that is probably the least of our concerns right now. Travel is a concern, but through the airport is not the worst that's occurring.
Can you talk about the eviction moratorium? I think that people think that they don't need to pay their rent, so I'd like to clear that up.
So right now, if people have a lease or rental agreement with their landlord, they have to pay the rent. It's a contract that you have with your landlord. So we're going to urge you to continue to pay your rent. Oftentimes your landlord has a mortgage to pay, and so if you're not paying rent, he can't pay the mortgage, and thus the bank's going to foreclose on him, and neither person will have a place. And so we want to prevent homelessness from occurring after this emergency is over. And so we want people to work with their landlords. If they're unable to pay their rent, they need to work that out with their landlord. What this eviction moratorium is the spirit behind it is to make sure that people that have the ability to pay continue to pay. If they don't, and there is an eviction process that's going to occur, which those can still happen right now, but the sheriff's office is the one that receives the paperwork from the courts to then evict people. And so right now I've made it clear, and also the governor made it clear, that we're not going to evict persons right now and make them homeless during this emergency, but someone can still apply for it and get the eviction process going through the courts once the civil process starts opening up. So afterwards, after the emergency is over, we will be continuing to evict people because they haven't paid their rent or they've failed to meet the obligations of their lease. So we don't want more people to be in that boat. So please pay your rent. Please work it out with your landlord if you have a hardship. But right now there's going to be economic stimulus that's coming in, and that there's more unemployment benefits that are coming in. Apply for those benefits. Apply for that. Use that stimulus to pay your rent, so we can get through all this. That's what that is for.
Anything else you want to include for today's video?
Oh, I just want to say that I understand the stress that this has on all of us, but I also want to recognize the stress it has on the children here in our community. And so I want everyone to kind of take a deep breath and try and find a place that you can talk to your kids about this emergency. Give them an avenue and the leeway to voice their concerns, their stresses about this. There are things that they can do. There's resources online. We do have a children's mental health unit here in the county. So to give ideas about how to take kids' minds off this and to make sure that we understand that they're going through stress. So when our kids are reading us. So if we're stressed, they're going to be stressed. So let's stay as calm as possible. We know we're going to get through this together. It's not the best conditions, but we're going to get through this together, and that we'll be bigger, stronger, and better, because we've gone through this. So that's all I have today.